on to unfinished business. 12.1, the 2026 Transit Service Expansion Funding. And I've got our Acting Director of Infrastructure, I believe, or are we bringing in the big boss, Mr. Ringma?
Good evening, members of council. So I'll introduce our Manager of Transportation, Mr. Cam Reid, who's going to speak to this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Council. With me is Mr. Rob Ringma from BC Transit. Hopefully at the end he can help answer any questions you might have. I'm just going to quickly summarize the report. At the end of last year, Council approved 2 transit expansions for 2026, one for 2,700 hours and 3 buses to be applied to the fixed conventional bus route, and another for 2,400 hours and 2 buses that was earmarked to allow for a potential on-demand component to our transit system. This time last year, BC Transit didn't have an actual on-demand service to offer. They were finishing off trials and whatnot, but there was no actual service available to us. BC Transit was successful earlier this year in accessing provincial funding for the expansions and are ready to move ahead with them in 2026. And they now have an on-demand service available. Expansion details are still in the works. Though BC Transit has just recently completed its Transit Future Service Review and Plan, which will guide the expansions. This plan will be presented to Council soon, likely early next month. As far as costs for the 2,700-hour conventional expansion, these have been included in the city's 5-year operational budget. And we have funding that will allow for implementation of on-demand service next year, but an ongoing operational budget beyond that hasn't been established. So in a nutshell, we're asking that Council direct staff to include ongoing on-demand funding in the 5-year financial plan budget deliberations. With that, any questions?
Mr. Ringma, do you have anything to add before questions or wait for the questions?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Chair, Councillors. Rob Ringma, BC Transit. I'm Senior Manager of Government Relations for BC Transit. Yeah, I think the last time I presented to Council, I had 3 real key takeaways. Number 1, finish a service review that kind of would consolidate a lot of the planning work that had been done around the region by the regional district, also by some City of Powell River staff as well. Number 2, there was a clear direction from Council that there was an appetite to be considered for a future on-demand implementation if BC Transit was in a position to formulate that as a service option within our kind of suite of service options. And number 3 was to pursue the matching and expansion funding from the province to help support those initiatives. So as Cam has alluded to, you approved the 2,700-hour conventional expansion as well as the 2,400-hour on-demand expansion. If I look at those 3 kind of things that I've been working on since last time as a council, the service review is complete. We're ready to present that to Council. A big part of that service review was focused on public and stakeholder engagement. So we spent the last kind of 8 to 9 months doing online surveys, open houses here locally in the community, and really getting what you'll see is pretty strong feedback from the public in terms of what they're looking for in terms of transit. And on-demand was a portion of that. So we've looked at the overall plan for these implementations and how to include on-demand, because on point 2, BC Transit was able to move to phase 2 of our on-demand program. Only 3 communities have been selected for phase 2, Powell River being one of them. So because of the work that this council's done to kind of advocate for that service and see if it could get funded through matching funding through the province and BC Transit, we've been able to achieve that. So if you remember the last time I was here, when we put that budget expansion, that transit expansion item in front of Council, it was with the intention that hopefully we would get to phase 2 and Powell River would be selected. So that's been achieved. And then lastly, in terms of the expansion funding, we were able to successfully secure provincial funding for both the conventional transit expansion that you've approved and the on-demand expansion. Not every municipality across the province received that kind of funding. Again, this year, BC Transit received unprecedented requests for transit expansion. The province did come to the table with an allocation of resources, but it wasn't enough to match the demand that we had received. But Powell River was successful in securing those resources. One of the things about transit expansions and resources is they're not, we're a little bit beholden to the provincial budget and what the province does moving forward. So it's not guaranteed to get expansion funding in any one year. So it's great that the city of Powell River received that funding. So with Cam's kind of proposal, staff's proposal here, what we hope to do, I think your budget deliberations are on December 3rd. We hope to come back to committee the whole meeting to lay out the entire transit service plan so you have an understanding of how the on-demand and the increases to some of the other routes and some of the strategic changes that we're going to propose to transit system based on the feedback we received will look, so that you can then go into your budget deliberations to have a real, educated and fulsome discussion on what that looks like. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll start with questions. I got Councillor Southcott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you very much for coming all the way up here to talk with us, Mr. Ringma. So with regard to the phase 2 on demand, am I hearing the transit's plans for our community? Am I hearing that we need to wait for maybe a few weeks to actually hear that report from you to find out what it might look like and when it might happen?
Yeah, so the intention, we just reviewed, so we've done, as I mentioned, we did all the public and stakeholder engagement, including working group work. We've consolidated all of those insights. Our planning team has then taken that away. I can give you a couple insights. People want quicker routes. They want more frequency, right? These are some things that really came through. On demand had strong support from those surveyed. If I gave you just a real 30,000 foot level view, it would really be looking to try to create what we call a frequent transit network. So a spine route that would have a high frequency along a lot of the corridors where a lot of those that we've talked to are saying they need to travel to or from. And then the on-demand portion would mirror current, like in the first phase, would probably currently mirror what Zungabus is currently covering in terms of coverage area. But obviously what we'll do is we'll analyze the data, continue to refine that and look for different improvements. But I would say the on-demand portion allows us, by having the on-demand portion allocated, allows us to take the other resources and put those into what we deem the fixed route service or your conventional bus service, to allow us to beef that part of the service up a little bit more heavily. So the two do kind of play together to help us have a very wholesome approach to how we look at the transit system in the city.
Thank you. Just wondering about the when, because we were considering on ending the Zungabus at the end of December.
Yes. So
how much of a gap is there likely to be?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Silcott. Through the chair, the plan would be, again, we've reviewed with staff. We're in a position to now review it with council. We do have kind of priority strategic options for a March implementation. So it would be a March 15th implementation of 2026. Many times I've come to this council before and talked about, hey, funding is not for initiatives that are a year out. Because you signed the MOU, we were able to go to the province, we were able to get the matching funding, the phase 2 program aligned to Powell River. And so, yeah, we're looking at implementation of this, of these expansions and improvements to the transit system for March of 2026.
Wow, thank you very much.
Councillor Elliott, did you have your hand up here, Councillor Rideout? Councillor Elliott, then Councillor Rideout.
So we have done tons of work in our city around piloting on demand, as you know. What did you learn that was helpful in this decision-making process from our pilot project?
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into a lot of that when I have my senior transit planner here with me, Adriana McMullen. She's fantastic what she does, and she can probably describe it a lot better than I can. But what I would say is, just in general, we will provide some stats on demand. But definitely there was, as I mentioned, about 70% of people were in favor of on demand. One of the other things about our on-demand service that will differ from Zunga is we'll use one of our ARBOC vehicles, which has basically full capabilities for anybody with a mobility aid or even a wheelchair. So one of the benefits to that is it may actually see a bit of increase in some of that ridership, and it may actually take some of the pressure off the Handy Dart system, where somebody who's maybe able, cognitively able, but maybe has a mobility aid, they would be able to use Zunga as an option because of the bus that we're using. So that was seen as a bonus as well. And then I just think, on demand, and I've been in front of council before, and we've done quite a bit of research on demand, and it really is effective in serving some of those areas that might not have the ridership that I'm going to use the word deserves, it's the wrong word, but that deserves fixed route transit, like a larger bus going up and down the streets. So on demand it works well in some of those kind of areas where the transit demand is there, but it might not be high enough to match what an investment would be needed if you went with a conventional larger bus.
I intuitively thought that as well. So my only other question, I think you've already answered, was that you're looking at bringing in a different infrastructure or bus or whatever than what we're using, but thank you.
I've got Councillor Doudt, then Councillor Palm, and Councillor Isaacson.
Oh, it's good timing that you're here. We passed a motion earlier in the year to end Zunga bus funding on December 31st of this year, and that's coming up pretty quick. Our 5-year financial plan introduction is happening on December 3rd. Just anybody in the crowd wants to come and hear all about our budget for the next 5 years, it's going to be here on December 3rd. And I'm pretty excited to hear you making a commitment that there is funding for on-demand transit in Powell River starting in the spring. It's a little better than where the city had to do all of the funding itself in the last year or so. So thanks for that. And what I hear you saying is right now, early on, you're probably looking at following the same model that the Zunga bus is following right now. And in the future, there might be a different kind of integration with the rest of the fixed route service. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? But thank you for the commitment, by the way.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councillor Doudt, through the chair. Yes, I think for the initial stage, when you design kind of on demand, I don't want to make it sound simpler than it is, but you really define a geographical boundary for that service. So when somebody goes on the app or calls in, if they're within that boundary, they can access that service. We will mirror the Zunga bus, the current Zunga bus service. There are some conversations about the number 3 Westview route and just a little bit of the overlap. Ultimately, if we could build up, say, the on-demand service to a certain point, we could maybe reallocate some resources down the road. So these are, what we need to remember with transit planning is it's never really a finite thing. We should always be analyzing the data, seeing where people are riding, seeing what modes are working, where we can reallocate investments. So I think the initial thought and some of the feedback that we received was that the on-demand, the Zunga on-demand kind of service area was a good one. So I think we're going to leave that as it is, implement our system. That'll help with a little bit less change management as well with some of our customers or some of your customers. And then we'll obviously continue to analyze, look at the KPIs and adjust as we see fit.
Thank you.
Mr. Palm.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Mr. Rigman, it's always a pleasure to have you in the chamber. Your delivery is always concise and to the point and well explained. And I just have to say thank you for the early Christmas present, earlier than usual. And it's very much appreciated, I'm sure, by the council and people that are using those services out there that need them so much. So really looking forward to the report. I'm not going to ask any specific questions, but you've answered a couple of them already, and sounds like fantastic news. So thank you very much.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to Mr. Ringma. First of all, I wanted to share, I did the survey, the most recent one, where you kind of outlined options, and I think like that survey was fantastic. So please let your engagement staff know in terms of like the different options that were shared, and kind of, outlining what is possible and what the trade-offs were. I thought it was just fantastic, and it made me really excited about the potential changes that we were seeing or potentially seeing. I remember in that survey, it mentioned the higher frequency potentially around the main corridor from Marine and Manson down to Joyce. And And then we were kind of offered the option of like whether there was a preference of a bit of a circle route around Westview versus on demand. And so you're saying that the preference in the feedback was for on demand in that survey?
Yes, Councillor Haskins,
Okay.
that's correct.
And so, so the circle route not wouldn't be a part of this plan, but the Route 3 still would be a part of this plan, you're saying?
Initially, yes. So
Initially, yeah.
we will keep the route, again, not to preface it, but we will keep the plan. It would be to keep the Route 3 currently. Again, analyze that and see the interplay that happens with the on-demand service. And the key difference in the new plan versus the current state and what council should, what was explained to me by our planner is that, the transit system has fundamentally stayed the same in Powell River for about 30 years in terms of the routes and where they are. What we'd really be looking again is to create that, what we call frequent transit network. And I think you've heard planning staff talk about, increasing frequency. So right now, some of our routes tend to travel in a lot of different areas and cover a lot of territory, which takes up time. So that when somebody gets on a bus, they have to ride the route all the way around to get to where their destination is. The feedback clearly was people want to be able to get on a bus. They need to get, and no surprise. Town Center Mall is a key destination with all the employment. People want to get from point A to point B in a fairly succinct manner. And then we can have local routes. So that would be your frequent transit route. And then we can have still local routes that serve the other neighborhoods that interconnect with that frequent route.
And just, you mentioned it would be a BC Transit vehicle for on-demand. You're talking about like the current Stillwater route or the Texade Island route, those smaller buses.
Yeah, correct. We classify that as a light duty bus. So that's the vehicle we have in our fleet right now. We made the decision to, in our on-demand systems, to use those light duty buses because just fleet procurement, economies of scale, those types of things. I think as the program develops further out, there may be some more customization. I personally see it as a net benefit to have that vehicle with the mobility aid capabilities of that vehicle class.
Thank you for your support for our community and advancing what's possible here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott, go ahead.
Just one more quick one. In the last year and a half or so, we've had our brand new Resource Recovery Center come online, and we've had a lot of accessible recycling stations within the community closed down, and now everyone's supposed to go to the new Resource Recovery Center with all of their recycling. And we've been made aware by folks that is not on a transit route at all. And I just wondered if you had heard about that through your survey and whether that has made it into your planning at all.
I have not specifically heard about that. Adriana may have heard that through some of the surveys. I haven't heard that reference to the resource center specifically, but I'll definitely follow up with Adriana.
Because it's kind of a recent phenomenon that people can't drop off their recycling in the downtown core area anymore. And so that's caused people to realize that if they don't have a car, it's hard to do.
Right. Yes. Okay. No, I'll make note of that and absolutely bring it up with our senior planner.
Thank you so much.
Also quite possible, depending on the timing, I can't remember when the survey was opened, that there might not have been an overlap, that the downtown recycling center might have still been open when the survey was open, so it might not have been an issue
It's a recent thing.
at the time of the survey. My one question, I appreciate you coming up here and even making the trip up here, and maybe you're coming up again in a couple of weeks, I don't know. So you might have been able to do this one virtually, so appreciate you making the trip. And appreciate to hear that we're getting this gift of some kind from the province and BC Transit and expansion. However, this is a gift that also means that as council, we have to approve extra budget as well. So I do need to ask the question. When the motions were passed last year, the anticipation was the 2,700 hours of service. Adding the on-demand to it, is that maybe doubling up in a way? Are we adding too much transit at the same time? And as much as I'd hate to say, thank you, province, we don't need as much, but because it's also still going to cost the city, I don't know if my question's coming out properly, but are we doing too much at once is what my concern is.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Almeida. Just to, and just for the public, just so everybody's aware, again, you are correct. Funding for transit with the province through BC Transit and the province, the Ministry of Transportation and Transit transportation transit specifically, that model is 53% to 47%. So the city puts in 53% of the cost. BC Transit through the province covers the other 47%. So that's the provincial funding that I'm speaking to. In terms of what was approved by this council when we did our transit expansion, it was a 2,700-hour expansion for fixed route conventional, and then it was an additional 2,400 hours for on-demand. That 2,400 hours was basically looking at Zunga Bus hours and what would be a direct kind of replacement as a starting point. So it's not taking away from the 2,700 hours. It's added to the 2,700 hours. But to your point, and the reason for the motion from staff today is that it does need to have a financial consideration in your long-term budget.
And is there, not that I necessarily want to go this route, but just to know what options are there, is there ever a case where there has been such an approval and then a year goes by when the approval comes through and maybe 2,700 hours we can't do, but we'd like to do 1,500 hours, like, but come back to that other 1,200 down the road? Is that even a consideration, or this is more like, hey, if you say no, you're not going to get the opportunity again, sort of thing?
And appreciate the question, Councillor Almeida. The answer to the question is this. Number one, when council signs that MOU, you are committing to those expansion resources. By the letter of the MOU, if, let's say, council did not approve that, you could still be charged the first year of lease fees for the vehicles because we have to procure the vehicles. I mentioned this last time as a council, vehicle procurement timelines are becoming more and more stretched out. It's becoming challenging for us as an organization to order buses, especially when it sometimes takes a year and a half to actually procure a bus. So that's one quote unquote risk that's there. Once the service is implemented though, we work very closely with your planning staff, very closely with your operations staff to determine the most optimal transit system for the area. We don't want to have buses rolling around town that are empty. We want to make sure that we have the right mix of service to get the coverage that we need, but also have the efficiencies, the return on investment, let's say, of those transit systems. So down the road, if again 2,400 hours is not appropriate and we're not finding the ridership numbers are there, then that's a conversation we can have with staff, with council about making adjustments. Maybe you want to reallocate some of those dollars from on-demand. If they're already in your budget, you may want to reallocate those to fixed route transit. You may want to reallocate some of those to Handy Dart service. There's all of those conversations that we can have, but ultimately it's local government that makes the final decision on investment levels in a BC Transit system. So I, as a representative of BC Transit, can't download costs onto this council. This council needs to come to alignment and agreement and put it into their budgets. This council has been very supportive of transit in the past. I think the reason for this larger kind of investment is there hasn't been an investment in a significant period of time, not necessarily because of the appetite from council to get some of those dollars, but post-COVID, the province was struggling to support expansion dollars when ridership really dropped off. So I think a myriad of those reasons, bringing together the service review, I think it's an ideal time. Again, I'm a bit biased, but I think it's an ideal time for Power River to make this investment in transit.
Wonderful. Thank you for that and for the reminder of previous conversations. Seeing no other questions, do I have someone for the recommendation? Councillor Isaacson.
I move that council include ongoing funding for on-demand transit service in the upcoming 5-year financial plan budget deliberations.
Second by Councillor Southcott. Seeing no other comments, all in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Ringma. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.